Welcome to another episode of the Yes California Cal Exit Group meeting. We've had a couple meetings that you can watch. Here's our newest one right now. With us today is the ambassador from the Texas Nationalist Movement. Welcome. We're going to have a lot of important updates about projects that we're working on and the continuing division in America, which aids both the Cal Exit and Texit movement. We'll cover all that in 1 second. But first, check this out and we'll be right back. Want to say welcome to everybody watching us out there. We record these things mostly for posterity. People can check them out afterwards, but you are always invited to participate. Just get a hold of us. And we're always looking for new members of the Cal Exit Congress, 30 or so people who help guide the decisions of Cal Exit. Now, today's meeting, we're going to be covering some basic. Let me just cover the basic material just going forward. Hold on, we just had another person. Rabbi, how's it going?
How you guys doing?
Good. We just started, so
not too late.
Sunday show starts here right now. Nobody's missed anything. We're going to cover some of the updates, and then we'll get to some interesting discussions. But just to make sure that the 30 people in the Cal Exit Congress and the 80,000 people who've connected with us at Yes California, and the 32% of the world's fifth largest economy who secretly still support Cal Exit, this is for you. So here's what we're doing. Agenda coming next month. We will have online courses in secession. We will be the only group hosting certification in secession, where the courses are now fully developed. We just have to get the software and load them on there. We will also be filing for a 501c4, not C3, which allows us to endorse political candidates and political events and take tax-deductible donations. We'll be filing that next month. We will also be filing a LLC form, Limited Liability Corporation form, and that is so that we can produce the Cali coin, which will be a non-fungible physical token celebrating Cal Exit. We're working with Eternia, and Eternia actually already developed the prototype to be printed for the Cali coin. We're also looking at converting our YouTube channel over to podcasts. So that's some of our project courses coming up. 501c4 so we can take donations because we will be filing a initiative, LLC form so that we can start printing Cali coins, and a podcast. Some of the projects that we're looking at now coming soon is we're in talks with Daniel Miller about a potential Texas Nationalist Movement podcast that we could go on where we could cover top secession movements. There's also going to be a documentary from, I'm totally drawing a blank on it. It's like Easygoing Productions. I'll get the name to you, but we've been working with the documentary company for about 6 months, doing multiple interviews with them. They also asked for a round of interviews after Roe v. Wade came out recently this week. And I was able to get a confirmation from them that the documentary about Yes California will be coming out in September. That is on top of the interview by Sean Fettig that we did. Sean Fettig is a podcaster, and he also interviewed Yes California. So podcast with TNM potentially coming out. Documentary on Yes CA coming out in September. Some of our recent accomplishments were we were the only Cal Exit group at a National Secession Conference. Now, it's not called the National Secession Conference. It's called PorcFest, the Liberty Festival. But because it hosts New Hampshire, Texas, California, and the top two most well-known elected officials who proposed secession in both New Hampshire and Texas, it is basically the default largest secession conference. We were the only Cal Exit group there. That video is available. We had a great time. Incredible conversations. I encourage everybody to check that out exclusively at the Yes California channel. We are also making contact with a new secession group in the Midwest. We'll see how that goes. We are continuing to make new contacts. We also got a political endorsement from John Drake. John Drake ran for governor in the recall election and for assembly. He is possibly the most well-known, youngest LGBTQ activist in California. He was personally contacted by the Lieutenant Governor of California, and he talked to her for about half an hour to an hour. So he knows Eleni Kounalakis. And after he saw Roe v. Wade, he said, I'm all about California independence. So we endorsed a political candidate this week, and we also got an endorsement back that a well-known person unconnected to the movement or who had not formally been part of it said that he's, on board. Additionally, we've had massive increase in traffic on our social media sites, Facebook and Twitter, because of Roe v. Wade. Jason Wright is going to cover that in just a second. I want to get through some of the updates and we'll go back to Jason. Just for everybody to know, our mission statement here at Yes California is to get conversation going. That is our big thing. We want to get everybody in California and America conversing about secession. Our goal is to be the most prominent site on social media before midterms happen, when we think interest in secession will explode. We are looking at funding ourselves through the NFT coin, the 501c4 donations for an initiative, and the online certification. However, we still need help with content creators. Our major driving force is the Facebook and Twitter page now. We need people to interact with people on those pages, and we need people to make content. And we've already been working with other groups so that you can get a direct pipeline to post. Now, if you get that pipeline, you have to run everything by Jason first. But the idea is that you could be a content creator and be interacting with people. Rich, I see you. Your device is not connected. You'd have to exit and come back in, and then I could have you in the chat room, Rich. That is it. Now let's go to Jason Wright on metrics. Jason, can you cover some of the incredible, outstanding growth that we have had on our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter this week because of the discussion about secession of Roe v. Wade? Want to thank Texas for that. Texas got the Texas secession idea in the news the week before Roe v. Wade was overturned. I was just talking to Daniel Miller, the president of TNM, last night about this, and we were talking about how fortuitous it is. We couldn't have planned for Texas to work through their legislature and their political party to release a platform on secession at the time they did. And we couldn't have planned for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade within days after that. So in America, you had a massive nationwide discussion on secession. And then days later, you give everybody a reason to secede. That's the work of God or an unnamed force. There is no way that anyone could have made that happen. And so we were talking about, wow, what an incredible sign. Secession's blown up in the news. And then just a few days later, it's, hey, liberals, here's a reason to secede. I mean, the timing couldn't have been better. So leave it there. Jason, tell us about the metrics that we have seen on our social media sites, please, sir.
Yeah, so for any viewers who maybe are not yet aware, I, Jason Wright, the CEO of this organization, the head of the CalExit movement, am the person who is running our Yes California and our @CalExitHome Twitter pages. I do sometimes comment from a personal viewpoint there, but as you may be able to see, none of my personal viewpoints are anything extreme on any end. That being said, I am still able to post some hot topic stuff, like calling out our governor, Gavin Newsom, and asking him why it is that he just cannot seem to endorse CalExit or get with the people of California when we say CalExit now. So that post in roughly 7 hours got about 1,200 people, reacting with it, interacting with it. That's decent. Some of our tweets where because Twitter has a limited amount of character space, it means that the hashtag symbol to make a hashtag and put it up there costs you a character. The space in between your hashtags so that it's not all running together also costs a character. So we can only fit so many hashtags into these tweets. It also means that there's little room to actually type up some sort of, high level thought process. That being said, these tweets that were kind of Twitter bombed out the other day, mainly just a retweet, and I put all of these hashtags: IndieRef2 for Scotland, Catalonia, who's starting to show love to Yes California again. We've got Orexit, Washexit, Aloha Independence. We got Texit, Caltexit, Caltexit Now, NHXit, Liberty Block, you name it, right? I'm trying to include a little something for all of our networks that have kind of joined forces together, right? Each one of our webs touches the other somewhere, and so I tried to ping as much of all of our webs as possible. Well, one post that was not actually filled with hashtags got some 70,000 hits in 24 hours. That was a post talking about how California was actually indeed its own independent republic for a period of time, and that we were annexed by the United States. It also led to some great conversation. Someone weighed in and said, something to the effect of there was a small band of rebels who claimed California was different for a period of time, and it lasted like a week or something. And so I then got the opportunity to point out, well, the Bear Flag Revolt was different from what I am talking about. The thing of which I am speaking is from long before that, before America ever came in. And I also got to point out the fact, a dirty little secret that America doesn't like to admit, that America sent military personnel into California. Shots were fired from both sides. People died on both sides. Americans lost their lives fighting against Californians. Let that sink in. That is something America does not ever like to admit to. Yeah, they had overwhelming numbers and firepower, and they won, obviously. But because we know the truth, we know that they came in and shot our people up. Some of our people fought back, but they came in and committed acts of violence in direct violation of what is now widely accepted international law. So this whole case is our precedent for we do have the right. We were our own country, and we were violated in this way that America even agrees is just absolutely wrong, dang near evil. I mean, other countries around the world do something similar, and America jumps all over them saying, they're evil! We have to protect the world from these bad people. So, pointed out that America has done that exact same thing to us. I also, usually, I didn't get a chance in this Twitter thread, but I do usually in my conversations with people like to reference Hawaii. Hawaii, the kingdom, the sovereign kingdom of Hawaii, was forcibly annexed by the United States using their military. Again, this is something even the United States says is wrong is bad, is dang near evil. So I am going to be trying to reaching out. Gonna give it a good, honest effort. Obviously, not every time we reach out to make friends and have good working relationships with other groups doesn't always bear the fruit that we want. Sometimes it's rotten fruit, as we've seen recently. But it doesn't mean that the mission stops, and this this tweet in particular getting this much attention, this much love. It says very clearly there are plenty of Californians who still believe in Calexit, who still want to Calexit. In fact, I am pretty sure that the only reason Calexit wasn't put up on the trending for Twitter was because of the amount of blockage in Google's search results. As Marcus had pointed out that day, in a National Divorce Talk Raw episode, go over to Google, type in the hashtag Calexit, find absolutely nothing. Like, it actually doesn't show pages of results. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we could not find what you are looking for. Google, can't find what we're looking for? Are you serious? Since when? So you go on Twitter and look at what's trending. Well, we were unfortunately excluded from the trending slots. However, if you just look for the hashtag Calexit and you aren't focused on whether or not it's trending, you'll see that Calexit feed actually kind of flooded Twitter for a little while. In fact,
Nice.
for a good portion of that day, Calexit was, and not just because, it's Yes California, so they're only showing us Calexit stuff, because I see all sorts of stuff. I see anti-Calexit stuff. I see very pro-America stuff. So it's not that. It's that enough people were talking about Calexit that you could readily, easily find anything to do with Calexit and not a whole lot else. I mean, you could find Roe v. Wade and protests and people calling for Calexit. That was about all that was on Twitter for an entire 24-hour period.
I'm trying to find the video where, to back up what Jason is saying, the day after Texas was Roe v. Wade came out, there's a lot of talk about secession. Google said there's absolutely no discussion on this when Twitter was blowing up. So that's just proof the social media sites lie. I was showing you guys our Twitter page. We also have our Facebook page. I hope you saw our Twitter page. Jason has been working incredibly hard over the last 48 hours. Massive amounts of posts about secession on our page. Our page has been blowing up for the last 2 days because the moment they announced Roe v. Wade, liberals lost it. And as we predicted, there were many people saying Calexit. We'd always been saying that the moment America seems to not work out, Californians immediately start screaming Calexit, even ones who are not connected to our movement. And the day after they announced Roe v. Wade, there was lots of people who had no contact to our movement, who've never heard of, who've never interacted with, just immediately going, yeah, let's Calexit. And our theory was always that the 32% of Californians who backed Calexit when Trump was elected never left. Maybe they stopped talking about it, but they never left. We had talked to more of those people than anyone. Anyone, the news professors, anyone. None of them said, I stopped believing California could survive as a nation. Now, the amusement petered out a little bit back in 2018, 2019. But when we see people years later who we have no contact with and America's failing and they immediately say Calexit, that's our point. 32% of the market is still there. 32% of 40 million people, about 15.7 million people still out there, still believe in Calexit, just looking for a good reason. And that's why we were very happy with the Roe v. Wade. Not that it happened, but that it showed our concept was true. We'd been saying these people are still out there and they still believe. They're just waiting for another good reason. And wow, were we proven correct?
Well, and also we had predicted that the Supreme Court would go ahead and start taking a look at things that they don't normally or would not normally consider taking a look at, and that they would most likely not remain unbiased, which seems to be the case. It very clearly says the judicial arm of the federal government of the United States of America is not truly what it's supposed to be. Now, I hear all sorts of people see it all over online, this illegitimate Supreme Court. Well, folks, this may hurt to hear, but it's got to be said for the sake of sanity and reasonability. The Supreme Court justices were put up there. They were appointed. They accepted the position. They got sworn in. They're there. They are the Supreme Court. Just because we don't agree with them, just because I personally find them to be highly biased, doesn't mean that they are not actually Supreme Court justices. What they say is law, folks. And look at what they just said. That is now the law of the land. So as much as you don't like it, it is still, unfortunately for some of us, legitimate. So we need to get past that, and we need to just Cal-X it now. Or Cal-Tex it now.
That doesn't mean we're with you, right? We're just leaving together, but out of separate doors, right?
Correct.
Yeah, well, and so that's a great opportunity to explain some of, like, you know, because obviously we've seen recently is there are some people out there who are like, how can Californians work with Texans? You're so different. And yes, we are very, very different. Most Texans don't seem to like California's policies. Most Californians don't seem to like Texas's policies. But you know what? As a Californian who lives in California, I don't really have to worry about what laws are going down in Texas because it doesn't actually affect me. It affects Texans. Do I feel for some of those Texans who maybe don't like those laws? Yeah. But, you know, freedom. You have the freedom to choose where you live. You have the freedom to vote for or against legislation. You have the freedom to, you know, say, hey, I'm me over here and you're you over there, and we can agree to disagree and still not be at each other's throats. Most Californians don't hate Texans as people. We just don't like the policies and some of the politicians. And the exact same goes for Texans. They don't hate Californians. They don't like our taxes. They don't like the way that we seem to not give a damn about homelessness and people dying on the streets, which, as a Californian, I am also highly disgusted by that. You know, there are things that we agree on that are like very fundamental core human things. And then there are things we don't agree on, which are more abstract and like, oh, well, I think we should crack the egg on this side. Oh, I think we should crack the egg on... You know what? Are we able to just agree that we all want some scrambled eggs, and so we need to crack the egg and put it in the frying pan, maybe give it a little butter, some salt and pepper, maybe a little paprika, if that's your thing? That's the essence of this whole thing. We at Calexit are not Texit. Texit is not Calexit. And we can both work together, much like when a couple is getting divorced, right? When they both realize, yeah, we've spent some time separated, we've kind of gone our own ways, tried playing around in the field and realized, wow, the grass is much, much greener on the other side. And so now we're meeting with our lawyers in a private little room, and we're discussing who gets what and who gets to, keep the dog, who keeps the house, who gets the truck, who gets the boat. But ultimately, husband's not threatening to shoot wife and wife's not threatening to stab husband. It's a peaceful divorce, amicable, mutually accepted. Hey, Texas, you want to be your own and not be part of America anymore? I feel you. As a Californian, I totally feel it. I'm right there with you. Si se puede. And I'm sure that Texans, Texas, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but you guys feel much the same way, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. One of the many points. When the Republicans are in the Oval Office, we see support on Texas kind of level off and lose some of its steam, where you guys get excited, and vice versa in the current situation. Although that's now flipped thanks to the Supreme Court, and I actually think that's positive for our movements. Sorry. No, we agree. We don't have to agree. Basically, it doesn't work. Everything's too centralized out there, and California knows best how to govern California. Texas knows best how to govern Texas. There was a time when we were allowed to do that a lot more autonomously, and now we don't have the ability. Almost every decision has to be run through DC. 40% of the time that the Texas legislature spends in session is crafting bills just to bring us into compliance with District of Columbia rules. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be spending that 40% of time crafting legislation that'll help Texans. And I'm sure Californians spend just as much time in their legislative session, because it's a matter of all these states have to come into compliance with what 12 square miles tells us to do.
I want to call.
Yeah, exactly.
The professor had his hand raised. I just want to call on him real quick, just to be fair. Professor, comments?
Yes. I think it's very important for us to recognize the historical context in this. It's not just that, there's this particular decision by the Supreme Court. It's that the president has too much power, including the power to nominate Supreme Court justices who go in there and, as we've seen, lie, directly. And then once they get into power, they do what they want. And so that's a big part of the problem. I think it's very important for us to distinguish what we are up to now as compared to what the southern states were doing in 1861, where a lot of Americans associate a state leaving the Union with Southern secession in 1861. And then they say, oh, well, that'll be a disaster because there will be a civil war. What is important to let people recognize is that the initial Southern secession occurred from December of 1860 into early February of 1861, and there was no war. There was no war until the Confederates made the mistake of firing on Fort Sumter in April of 1861, and that's what really started the war. So if we have a determination to remain nonviolent, we can have a movement that does not have to make that same rash mistake that the Southern secessionists made in 1861. And so I think it's important for us to publicize how governments have separated in the past without going to war. The most recent example being the collapse of the Soviet Union, which fell apart without a huge Russian civil war. Norway peacefully separated from Sweden in 1907. The Czechs and the Slovaks went their separate ways to abolish the awkward nation of Czechoslovakia. And so all of these things are examples in history of peaceful separations that are done without war. Okay, so what I've been working on is a proposal for how a peaceful separation can occur in the United States. And that is to, Marcus, are you able to put up a map of the United States showing the different states? While I'm talking, I don't know if that's possible, but if everybody can kind of visualize what I'm going to be talking about, is that we have to look at these things.
Yes, I can do that. And then I can do that. And then I want to
context of California or Texas, but how we could construct a workable model for the breakup of the United States in a peaceful way.
Well, 1 second. I need to say something. Yes, I can do that. And then I want to get back to the conversation between CEO Jason Wright and Texas Nationalist Movement. I thought this was going to be a little comment, but we'll cover it now. So let me do a share screen.
Would it be better for me to do this later on after they finish?
Jason?
Yeah, could we hold off on that for just a couple of minutes and get back to the collective?
Sure, I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
We'll do a presentation by the professor at the end. I promise you. Professor.
Yeah, and no worries, Professor. I mean, we just weren't expecting you to.
Here temporarily, if I'm, as you know, I'm caretaking for my mother. If she needs me, I'm going to have to leave. So,
understood.
If we could do it, as soon as possible, that would be good.
Understood. But let's continue the conversation with Jason and TNM. I'm sorry. What were you guys talking about?
Well, so we were talking about how different we are while also being similar in certain ways, how we can agree with the fundamental human right to self-determination, and that because this is what we are seeking, it would be inane, which means it makes no sense. It would be inane for us to say, yes, we agree with the fundamental human right to self-determination for us, but no one else, or for select people, but not these other people, just because we don't like them. We have unfortunately run into that very recently, both Texit and Calexit together. Mostly in relation to our professional relationship. And really, folks, some people think that Texit and Calexit working together means that the state of Texas and the state of California are somehow hand in hand and working to become a country together or something. This is not the case. California is not trying to help Texas leave. Texas not trying to help California leave. It's that we are both supportive of each other's right to decide whether or not we wish to leave.
Yeah, exactly. We get the question quite a bit of, we'll get people, anyone that wants to look it up can look up what Texas viewed as its original borders when we entered by treaty in 1845. It actually goes all of the Rio Grande, so basically the eastern half of New Mexico, and then a long panhandle up into southern Wyoming, is what some people within the Texas national love of Texas history kind of thing, not within our organization. They're like, well, can we go back to our original borders, this and that? And the answers to things like that is no, because that's been given up long ago. We actually traded that land away in exchange for debt relief upon entering. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point, because I hear a lot of Californians and people north of California asking about, well, what about the state of Jefferson? Well, the state of Jefferson is not a state, nor has it ever actually been a state in the United States of America. Therefore, it doesn't actually apply. All of this legal stuff, it doesn't apply to them. It does, however, apply to all of California, how our borders are now, which, funnily enough, is the same as it's the same borders we used to have once we fought a war against Mexico, won our independence. There was a line drawn. They ended up with Baja California. California ends up as California, California, and we've been this ever since. And so, while maybe the state of Jefferson folks can't do it all by themselves, and maybe California, California, as is now, can't just scoop up Baja California and say, hey, Mexico, this is ours. We can work together, and we can pursue what we currently have. We can try to keep what we have safe. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I lost train of thought. I've got a couple distractions going on here. We'll have people occasionally that'll say, well, can we join with Louisiana and Oklahoma, since Oklahoma largely was part of Texas at one point, or can we join all the Gulf states together? And the TNM policy and what Daniel's spoken about is that's great. We'll form an alliance with them, but if you look at what the Texas map is right now, that's what the nation of Texas, our intention, it's going to be that. We're not going to be co-joined with California. Day one, we'll sign a peace treaty with you guys, a mutual defense treaty, whatever, mutual trade treaties, but we're not joining with California in any way in terms of government. There will be two completely separate governments, just like we won't be joining with Louisiana. And even though we like to joke that Oklahoma would become our largest county, we're not joining with Oklahoma or anyone else. So yeah, we work together the same way that you'll have Starbucks and they're one of their suppliers. They work together because it benefits both of them. Same thing with us. It benefits both of our movements. It also benefits Alaska, Hawaii, New Hampshire, all of these people that want their own independence. It benefits everybody if we all work together.
Exactly. And it's funny because I've been talking a lot about the potential of the nation of Pacifica, and it all comes down to the idea that if California were to actually reestablish our independent republic status, and Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii, right, all do the same in turn. Well, now you've got all of these individual independent entities. Those entities, which would include California, could get together. They could not, but they could, right? It's the freedom. You have the choice. You could come together and agree to form a different union from what was the United States, something, I don't know, kind of comparable to the European Union, the nation of Pacifica, Pacific entities that are independent yet work together because we know it's in our common good. California would be California, Oregon would be Oregon, Hawaii would be Hawaii, but we could potentially, if we so choose, could all work together in the spirit of cooperation and humanity. Woohoo! But yeah, so it's, it's very similar to that, let's join the Gulf states together, and, and a lot of Californians, when they think about just California, yes, we're super powerful entity, agricultural, this, that, the other, technological, but California all on its own, really? And so when people start to think about the potential that there is this prospect that we could choose this, it is not a guarantee. It's something that would have to be worked for after, we would have to work for our independence and get that, and then continue to work to push whoever our leadership is now at that point to make this reality. And just like Texas, right, for your folks, it's all the same thing. Like, Texas is different from California. The Gulf states would be different from the Pacifics, but ultimately it's the same principle. It's the same series of legal mumbo jumbo, right? And it's just providing a picture of kind of an optimistic outlook, right? Here at Yes California, we're great at predicting things, and we have predicted so much of the terrible, atrocious stuff that Californians, by and large, have just detested over the last several years, with like 98% accuracy. So, we're doing much better than the professionals who advise the President of the United States. So maybe just go ahead and listen to us when we throw this idea out there. Doesn't mean you have to do it, doesn't mean you have to be for it, but at least just consider it and let yourself realize that whichever independence movement, right? Texas, New Hampshire, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, California, right? No matter which entity you're coming from, there is a greater potential as long as we can achieve the first step. And that's what our working together in a mutually beneficial, agreeable divorce is. It staves off Civil War 2.0. We recently had, and I personally, Jason Wright, the CEO, have a great admiration and respect for Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. That being said, she said something that kind of helps and also kind of hurts for our movement. Because what she said wasn't the legally proper. She did try to make it clear, and I think it's kind of clear when you read through the interview. She is not saying people go, break federal law. But when she said it the first time through, it did come across as sounding like nullification. Like she was pushing for the same action that kind of led to the Civil War in the first place. One group says, hey, we still believe in slavery even though you don't, and we are mandating that you, even though you don't agree with slavery, you don't believe it, it's actually illegal where you are, you have to follow our rules, our laws, which say you have to return these slaves to us. They're our property, not people. And, the other side said, well, forget that. We're not doing that. Nullification. Your law means nothing to us. We don't have to follow it. Well, that, and, Professor Williams is right. Fort Sumter was the beginning of the firing part, the fight and die part of the Civil War. But what started it all off, the first thing that, got that initial little snowball together before it started rolling down the hill and turning into an avalanche, well, that was the Fugitive Slave Act and the action of nullification, which then was met by, legal retaliation of nullification of some of their stuff. Oh, fine. You refuse to return our fugitive slave property to us, then we're going to go ahead and use your same line on you. Your laws don't mean anything to us. We don't have to listen to you. You're not us. You're not the boss of me. Right? And gee, when you hear it like that, it's kind of no wonder that it turned into a battle on the playground. Bunch of kids fighting and screaming. And, we all know the Civil War was bloody. It was horrible. It was brutal for everyone. No one won the Civil War. Everybody lost. Everyone. And so when Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis said this, it kind of hurts our cause because we don't want people to get the wrong ideas or start going down the wrong path that leads to seditious behavior, violent overthrow of the government, right? We totally 100% are absolutely against that, because that is the only time where the UN entrance charter is now, our right to self-determination is now null and void. Because we did not seek it in a legal manner, we start seeking it in a violent manner. Now we lose all of our right, all of our cause, every last little ounce of dirt that we were standing on this little island in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. All of that gets eroded out from under us the moment that one person starts promoting violence and our organization does not come out and say, hey, no violence of any kind whatsoever.
Okay. I do need to add two little notes, though, just technical notes. Absolutely agree with Jason. After California's independent, which is the basis of this group, there are other options that you could pursue for even enlargement. That being said, yes, California is dedicated to Calexit and California secession, and the majority of our members are dedicated and only interested in that. We wanted to let you know that there are many other possibilities to basically be a force multiplier, as Daniel says. Jason's pointing out that don't let Calexit be the end of your dream. It could be so much bigger beyond that. California could become the second most powerful nation state. That's something we've had Calexit members allude to. Also, Lenny Kounalakis, very cool. Yes, it doesn't exactly look good to have the lieutenant governor say something illegal. But it is shocking to have the second most powerful person in the world's fifth largest economy talk like a Southern secessionist last seen since 1861. I just showed you the post we put up there. By the way, yes, California, Jason and I were the only people to point that out in America. Nobody else broke that news. We were the only ones to break the news that the second most powerful person in the world's fifth largest economy promoted nullification like a Southern secessionist. So we were pleased to do that first.
And also, before we get over to the professor, let me just throw this out there. I put it on Twitter. I tagged our lieutenant governor's Twitter on there when I mentioned this, but I will go ahead and put it out there again. Lieutenant Governor, ma'am, if you wish, we will gladly offer our services of counsel on this legality, right? You want to learn about the do's and don'ts of secession, the things you can and cannot say. We will gladly offer you our services. We're not saying you're going to have to do anything for us or anything. It will help us to have you on the same page, because then the next time you feel like saying something about independence, self-determination, secession, nullification, anything, you will be saying the exact right things. People will have a higher respect for you for that, and they're more likely to listen, which just helps us. So help us help you. Let us help you help us.
Yeah, I do love the Silent Mike says, do you like our sous vide?
Sous vide.
Sous vide. This is from Silent Mike. Oops, sorry. Why is it doing that? Cancel. Go here. You like our, I don't speak French, whatever that says. That's to Dan Rice, the TNM from Silent Mike, one of our members. I think it's a dish. Is that what you and Mike were talking about earlier, Jason?
Yeah, it's a style of cooking where you basically, it's like boiling, but you're not just throwing it into boiling water. It's a very blatant, exact temperature of water, and you keep the meat from just being boiled. So usually it's packaged in something that keeps it separate from the water, and it's just the heat that cooks it.
All right, we will try to teach you French, and now you know about some French cooking. I do want to get to the professor, but I want to finish up this topic. Comments from anybody about this? And then we'll go to a presentation. Is there some smoke involved? No smoke involved, as I understand. It's a marination. Jason, follow-up comments? Are you on mute? Oh, you are on mute. I unmuted you. Jason's muted himself. Okay. Dan Rice, any follow-up comments you'd like to make?
No, I think I'm good. I mean,
okay. All right.
It's something we're gonna have to repeat 100 times. We've been doing it for years at TNM. Just have to keep telling people, no, we're not joining with them. And yes, it's okay to have mutual interests that we both, we have this mutual interest. It's okay to pursue that together without joining everything else up. There's no reason to believe that we're in any way trying to do that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Peaceful, 100%. We kick people out regularly. The two of you, I'm not going to go public with it here, but the two of you know a conversation I had this week, and where I outlined our primary rule is, as long as you're not advocating violence, you're welcome in our organization. We don't care what your issue is. We're not the board. We don't have a collective, one mindset where we all do this or we don't do that. It's, at the end of the day, I clock out and I go and I'm doing whatever around town. And I'm sure half the people in my organization don't have interest in that. And I don't have interest in, their origami quilts or whatever they're making. I don't know. Everybody's unique. Just like individuals are unique, the states are unique, and all is welcome. Just don't be an asshole. Is our kind of unofficial motto.
And don't make origami quilt. So
yeah.
So neither one is good. Yeah, Devil War agrees, and we agree. No violence in Calexit or in Texit. And by the way, backing up what Dan Rice said, I talked to Daniel Miller last night, and he sent me a series of essays from Gene Sharp. And if you know anything about Gene Sharp is the world expert on nonviolence and using that to change government. So I had read Gene Sharp before I wrote the book on Calexit, and I was blown away to see that the leader of the TNM was as big a fan of Gene Sharp as me. If you know who Gene Sharp is and you know how the man dedicated his life to nonviolence in at least 30 different countries, then that says everything you need to know about the commitment of TNM and Calexit to nonviolence. If you've read this man and you are a fan of this man and you're familiar with his work, there's no way you could be for violence. Impossible. So look up Gene Sharp. I was deeply, deeply impressed to see that Daniel was as big a fan of him as I was, and neither one of us knew that about each other, when we were working together. So it was a great confirmation. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Without further ado, and Jason, unless you want to say something, we're going to go to the rabbi. I'm not the rabbi. Walter, Professor Walter Williams, to give a presentation. Walter, I've queued up the internet. So if you want me to pull up a map of America, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, let me do that right now.
And do you have the capability, as I mentioned, states to like make them a different color or mark them off or somewhere so that we can visually see this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not that technologically just proficient, but if you can do it so people can follow along, I'd appreciate it.
Let me see. I think we can. Give me a second here. Give me 1 second.
Do you want me to start speaking while you're working on that?
First, tell me, I'm going to try to do a share screen for my Excel screen.
You don't need to have me as a picture in here. Just show the map.
I understand. Let me see if this works. Oh, okay. So I need you guys to tell me if you can see this. Can you see an Excel screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, then we're good. Walter, tell me what you want, and I will modify this map as your conversation goes along.
Okay. So what I've been trying to think of is what would be a process by which this could be done without violence. And it's based on the fact that the United States Constitution allows any action to be taken as an amendment to the Constitution if the state legislatures or conventions of 3/4 of the states agree. And so out of the 50 states, that would be 38 states. Okay, so let's look first at the potential Pacifica states that we were just talking about. So it would be California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and I would include Nevada. I think Nevada would go if all the West Coast states went. Nevada would go with us. Okay. Alaska might want to join with Pacifica, but it might want, I don't know, it might want to become part of Canada. It might want to become its own independent country. I think that's up to the Alaskans, but, we certainly would welcome their support for this constitutional amendment. Okay, so there you've got, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states there. Okay, and then let's look at the Northeast. I think that the same political factors that would propel the West Coast out of the Union would propel the Northeast as well. So if we look at New England and New York, okay, and then adding in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, and maybe Virginia, that would be a Northeastern union that I have just named just to make it parallel to Pacifica and name it Atlantica. Okay. And so then you would have, in addition to that, you would have the Great Lakes states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then you have the 3 states right below the Great Lakes, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Now, those 3 states, I think, would be very split, probably pretty much along geographical grounds. I used to live in Ohio, and it was very clear that there was almost a line divided through the state. The northern part of Ohio being more liberal, the southern part being more conservative. Okay, so let's assume that those states might not be totally supportive, but that they would recognize that they might want to split. So if the votes could be of those Great Lakes states as well as the Northeast, okay, then you add in Texas, and I would, for purposes of this plan, I would encourage the Texas group to think about maybe adding Oklahoma, or at least offering them the option if they wanted to join Texas. Okay, so then in the plan that I was suggesting, that if Atlantica seceded or left the Union, then where are you going to have the national capital? Now, if you put the national capital in Memphis, which is right on the border between Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi, you could probably get the votes of those three states just because they would have such close proximity to a new national capital. Okay, so if you add all of those states, and then there is, I think movement in New Mexico, possibly Arizona, about leaving and doing their own thing, or maybe joining Pacifica. I don't know. What I'm concerned about now is just getting the votes of 38 states. Okay, and so then you have the question of the Mormons in Utah and Idaho who might be interested in having their own separate Mormon theocracy, however they would want to set it up, that they might be interested in establishing their own separate government. So if you add in all of those things, that equals about 33 states. So that means that in this scenario, that only 5 more states would have to vote for the amendment in order for it to be enacted. How might those 5 states, the votes of those 5 states be gained? I think because of the very conservative states that would welcome the opportunity to be rid of the liberal West Coast and the liberal Northeast. So it's just a plan to see how such a separation might occur along a constitutional basis without violence. And I think if we could start verbalizing these kinds of possible scenarios, it would get more people in more states thinking about the possibility in a very concrete way. And so the reason I wanted to bring it up here is to get your reactions and what do you think, your ideas or suggestions for changes, whatever. I just wanted to get some feedback before I write this up. So please, comments.
I'll start by saying that interesting idea. The exact same comment that I gave to Jason, which is we are dedicated to CalExit, and most of our members are too. Now, this could be an option for after we achieve CalExit in order to inspire people of how much more greater California could be, and also how to possibly achieve CalExit. But I just want to make sure for our members that we're not saying that we're moving away from the understanding that they have. That's my only comment. I think that your concept of get 33 states invested in it so they have some skin in the game, there's something they could gain, and that means you only need 5 more states in order to do the interpreted requirement of 2/3 states. That's pretty smart. I see what you're doing. You're saying how many votes do we need and how do we get those people to be?
Well, you have to have 2/3 of the states to get it considered as an amendment, but you have to have the votes of 38 states to actually have it enacted. Which
if we go the amendment route, I'm just saying that typically, yes, California believes we don't need to have an amendment and we can have a simple consent of Congress vote, given that the top 2 constitutional scholars in California said so, and that was not precluded by Salmon Chase in the Texas versus White decision. But yes, if we do go the constitutional amendment route, you're absolutely right. And I think this is a pretty damn smart plan on how to market that idea to others. That's my comment.
I think that would expand it to basically all of the states to get a discussion going. And I think the more that it's becomes part of the public discourse, the more reasonable it's going to start appealing to people. So rather than just saying California or just saying Texas, we're looking at it in a larger vision And it's not to say, and Marcus, I don't disagree with what you said about, the goal of Yes California is to promote Cal Exit. I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying that if we have a vision that goes beyond that we can actually more likely accomplish it in a peaceful way.
I hear what you're saying. Comments from other people?
Again, we joke about the Oklahoma edition, but it's not something, kind of like what you just said with Cal Exit. You're focused only on Cal. And like I said, we'd gladly have an alliance tomorrow if we could. There have been, I don't know the current status of it. There was an OK Exit that was forming about a year or so ago. And I'm still in communication with the guy that was involved with that, but his mind may be in different places at the moment as far as what he wants to do. But they could go with them. I see the concept of gathering the states. We wouldn't, from TNM's point of view, push it as, Texas and Oklahoma together. But I think you would pick up Oklahoma easily as a vote among this. I also think you pick up places like Montana, Wyoming, all that. I don't see that. I saw the Utah-Idaho connection, but I think I've heard at one time because part of my job duties is engaging with these other independence movements, and I've heard of a proposal of a Rocky Mountain states of America. I don't know who I heard it from, but it was basically you take Arizona, New Mexico, and go straight north, and you take everybody that gets touched by going straight north. And I've seen a couple.
I'm not Mormon, but I do know a good bit about LDS history. And I'm sorry. And I think that there is a realistic, viable alternative if they felt that they could control specifically Utah and Idaho, where they have the highest percentages of Mormon population, that they would be very interested. But of course, they wouldn't be interested unless all of the West Coast left, and then they would be able to have their own contiguous border. So the Mormons, they're very conservative politically, and they accept the legality of the United States. But we have to remember that the original Mormon settlement went to Utah when it was part of Mexico, and their goal was to get away from the United States. And there has been this conversation within Mormon circles throughout their history of wanting to be a separate country. And so they're very worried right now about losing majority control in Utah specifically. I mean, they're already a minority in Idaho, but there's still a substantial portion of Idaho that's Mormon. So I think, I don't have any direct connections with them, but because they are a theocratic group, if the president of the LDS Church says something, then that's considered the word of God, and that's something that Mormons will do. So they're very much in favor of following what the president of the LDS Church says. So we shouldn't count them out either. So other comments or questions?
I have a comment, and I'd like to just first start by saying, please pardon any background traffic noise. I had to switch location, and some people are not as considerate as others when folks are on meetings. So my comment is this.
Been there, totally understand.
So my comment is this: for inspiration, for a reason, one of many reasons, right? Not the reason to CalExit or Texit, but a reason. This line of thinking works. It's inspirational, it's motivational. It tells people if we take step one, we could take any other step we would like to take after that. But first is step one. So the idea of the nation of Pacifica means absolutely nothing if we do not pursue CalExit now. If we wait too long, you never know. I mean, so with all of the talk about, you know, constitutional amendment, this and that, as the CEO, the direction that I'm taking as far as legal stepping stones is that we will, sometime after the midterm elections, we will be filing our independence initiative yet again. We will hopefully get cleared to gather signatures, and then we will go and gather signatures. And if we can gather enough signatures, we as Californians get to actually have a vote. Do we CalExit or do we not CalExit? It will be our decision. Until we hit that point, though, we don't even get a decision. We just get to be for it or not, like it or not. It's an idea. But once we get to that point where we can actually vote on it, it's not just an idea anymore. It's ours. It is a tangible, real thing. It is our reality. Now, if Californians vote yes on it, and we agree that we need to reestablish our independence from the United States of America, then we approach the United States and seek consent of the states. As Marcus had pointed out, there is no set definition of, you know, is it this majority, that majority? Is it totality? Is it like unanimous? It has to be a unanimous decision or else you can't leave. No, it's quite clear that that is not clear. The only thing they say is by consent of the states, which means, you know, consent is the majority. So as long as we can get 25 other states, pretty sure Texas would give us a yes vote to leave. Pretty sure New Hampshire would give us a yes vote to leave as it stands right now. So if we get consent of the states, yet the federal government still decides they don't want to let California go. We are their unlimited spending card. The only reason they can sink themselves $300 trillion into debt over more bombs and bullets and less baby bottles and books. The only reason that they can do that is because they look at California and they say, okay, California will produce this much over the next 20 years. That means we are going to spend that much right now. And California will be working its butt off for the next 20 years to repay what America has just signed up for. It's you know, it's credit. They're taking out a huge sum of money based on future projected income. So without California in the mix, the United States of America has to curtail its war machine. It will not be able to afford hundreds of trillions of dollars to send all around the world for death and destruction.
Okay. Could I reply to that specific point, Jason?
Well, let me finish real quick because that was getting at the last part. which is
Okay.
if the United States says no, you got consent of the states, but we still say no, then the next and final legal step is to approach the United Nations. Now, a lot of people laugh when they hear the United Nations, and I get it. You know, they don't do quite as much as a lot of us feel that they should. That being said, the United States has signed the UN Entrance Charter, which is a treaty, which under the rule of law in the United States of America, first and foremost come treaties and trade deals, then the sacred founding documents of America, which is like the Declaration of Independence. Then come like federal laws, state laws, county laws, city laws, right? So that's the rule of law. So first and foremost is treaties and trade deals. The United States, to join the United Nations, had to sign a treaty. In that entrance charter of the UN, that treaty that America signed and agreed to, it says very clearly that we have the fundamental human right of self-determination. It tells us how to properly pursue it in legal and peaceful means. It tells us, even as much as, you know, they go pretty far with it. They lay out penalties. Most law does not lay out penalties for the offender. However, this one does. It says very clearly that should the overlord nation work in any sort of manner, be it this, that, the other, to subdue or subvert or prevent the pursuance of self-determination by people under their purview, that they could be penalized with myriad different penalties leading all the way up to, not excluding, but actually includes expulsion and replacement. So if the USA, if it gets this far and the USA says, yeah, we understand you did all this, but we're still not letting you go, then California has a mandate to approach the United Nations and say, hey, the United States just broke your treaty. Here's what's going on. Here's what happened. Here's what they did. And there is a strong likelihood, given how much of the United Nations members don't really like the US so much, see the US as a bully who bullies them into, you know, going around the world and having war. Chances are they might actually be a little bit excited at the prospect of replacing the United States with someone much more reasonable like California. So that's our legal path. That's, I mean, ultimately it's step 1, step 2, step 3. We hope it just works at step 1. But we're prepared for if it does not, all the way to the very end of the line.
May I comment? Hello?
Yeah, I'm done. My apologies.
Okay. Yeah, I fully support that, Jason. I think that's a good idea. But the thing, if we pursue this idea that I suggested about an amendment to the Constitution, the beauty of that is that it does not require any action by the federal government. The Constitution specifies that it is either the state legislatures or conventions in the states that will make these votes. And so the United States federal government has absolutely no role in that. So whether they object or not, which, you know, they might well do, under the Constitution, they don't have any right to prohibit the states from making those votes. And so that would be the constitutional route for going at it. But I agree with you, Jason, that after that step would be done, that then appealing to the United Nations certainly would be a next step. But the beauty of the amendment is that it doesn't require the federal government can object all they want, but according to the Constitution, it's the vote of 3/4 of the states, and that determines.
Well, and whew, pardon that loud truck. As a afternote to that, I would postulate that the way that California was forcibly made a state is different from the way that any states have ever become states, even after. So ultimately, the United States already broke its own precedent and, reset all of that. They did. I get what you're saying, but ultimately, the US has already undone that, which kind of makes our job even easier. One, it allows us a little more breathing room. And two, it allows a little more room for the federal government to screw up and get themselves kicked out of the UN and replaced by California. And, real quick, I gotta say, I was so surprised when Donald Trump actually listened to his people and said the exact wording that they told him to say about when he's asked about CalExit, what does he think? If he would have said the wrong thing, that would have been a violation of the entrance treaty. He instead was actually smart enough to listen to whoever it was that told him, say exactly this, no more, no less, no different. And, this is being pointed out because there are politicians who have not been that savvy, that have not been smart enough to listen to their people telling them, say these exact words, no more, no less, no different. So ultimately, the federal government could screw it up for itself at any point in time. And that's really just in favor of our movement.
Am I on?
Yep, we can hear you.
You can hear me? My question for the professor. So you're talking about doing this as a convention of states? A new convention of states?
No, the Constitution says the separate conventions of 38 states can make this decision. So it doesn't have to be one convention over the country. It is 30 conventions or legislatures of 38 states. Now, the Constitution does not really define how it's going to be determined. Is it going to be a state legislature or is it going to be a convention? That's something that I think we need a constitutional lawyer to tell us if anything is known about that. I don't know about that, but it specifies either the votes of the state legislatures or a convention within the state. So we're not talking about a national convention. We're talking about 38. We need to get 38 state conventions or state legislatures. So I would say go through the state legislatures first, and then if they don't agree, then you look for conventions in those states where the legislature might be resistant.
By the local convention of states guy, and I understand what you're saying now. I would just not, I like the idea, but just the challenges I see out there, Right now, Convention of States, I think, is only at 17 states, and they've been trying it for 10, 12 years now, I think. I would wonder if it would be just as difficult to get the legislatures to consider that idea on its own as a separate issue. I see where you're saying where individually they can do it, which I think actually would work a little better than what a true full convention of states would be.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how resistant they would be. It's not that it's a bad idea. I'm just, I want to get it done yesterday.
In
And
numbers. If if this becomes popular in more states, I think it will start snowballing. And people that would have dismissed it when it's just talking about one state, if you're just talking about New Hampshire, then people might say, well, who cares? But if you're talking about all of New England and New York, then it starts taking on a bigger question and a more serious issue to more people. And I think that would be a good way for us to publicize the whole thing as well. I can't hear you, Marcus. Marcus, I could not hear what you said.
Sorry, 5 more minutes, and then we're going to move on to covering the conference that we went to. So 5 minutes to wrap up this discussion, and then we'll be moving on to the conference. And also talking to the rabbi who's been patiently waiting and asking about how awesome he was to race the conference between Texas and Galaxy. So 5 more minutes. So if you guys have more comments on this discussion, you have a few more minutes to finish it up, and then we'll get moving in. So Professor Williams, Jason, if you have anything more you want to say.
I appreciate your comments. So I will try to write up something and send it around for further input. You're muted again, Marcus.
Professor, other comments that you would like to make on this plan?
No, I just appreciate if anybody has other ideas, please email me, and I will try to write it up and then send it around for further input from people.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. We're going to go to Rabbi Axelman. Are you still there?
Yep.
I wanted to cover the awesome conference. I'm still working on getting the edited video out. I saw your emails. I'll be working on that today with better edited version videos with better titling. But I did want to show a little bit of the conference, and I was wondering if maybe you could talk for a minute or two.
If I think of something intelligent to say, sure.
Well, let me show the share screen of the conference. So we have a couple versions of this. This is just one. Let me show you this real quick. I don't know why that's... Okay, this is the wrong one. Sorry. Yes. Let me find it. The one that says clean audio. Give me 1 second. And I had a cue to the... There he goes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just to echo what you said before we threw to Marcus, which is, I mean, look, this is a pretty straightforward proposition, right?
So right there is the vice president of CalExit, Rabbi Stephen Axelman, and he helped organize Pork Fest. Next to him in the green shirt in the top right corner is Alu Axelman, head of the New Hampshire Independence Movement. In the bottom right corner is Daniel Miller, head of the Texas independence movement. And in the top left corner is Mark Ruiz Evans, head of the California independence movement. Also featured on the screen is Kyle Biederman, the elected official who proposed secession in Texas. And if I could get it to not have a blank screen. Mike Sylvia is also there. If I can pull up the video. There he is. There's Mike Sylvia in the top right corner in the white shirt with Kyle Biederman. So we had this conference with the top 3 largest secession movements in America meeting, at least this panel discussion, I should say. And then we had the top 2 politicians known for pushing secession legally and peacefully there. So it's the largest conference of people from around America, the entire continent, who are elected officials and unelected activist leaders in secession. Huge conference. We were proud to be there, to be the only lefty, liberal, and California group promoting secession. Rabbi, comments?
My only comments were I think it was a fabulous success in bringing the movements together, and it was fabulous success in bringing those 3 state legislators together for the first time probably ever, and I hope we can just keep building on that.
It was a great conference. I loved talking to Daniel. It was fascinating to be able to talk to Kyle. These people are in the news, and then here they are, all these different independence movements together and all these elected officials together. And, we're having a conference of this nature, and having multiple state secession movements conference together again, and having elected officials promote the idea of secession in any capacity. You haven't seen it since 1861, about 160 years. So while it may appear small to people, this is historic. Be clear. Rabbi, am I getting that wrong?
Nope, I think you're getting it totally correct.
Awesome. So it was a good conference. How long did you have to work on setting this up?
As far as which part?
Just all PorcFest. It takes about 3-4 months to set up.
Well, I don't do PorcFest. I just did that part of it, and because we did the same thing last year, because Daniel came to Liberty Forum, we know the people pretty well right now. So they were very willing to give us 2 hours in the big venue, which is really great to have. So that part, getting the time and the space reserve, was not such a big deal. It was a matter of getting people together, even on Zoom. And thank God that all worked out.
That was awesome. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we covered that. That was a huge success. We were very pleased to be there. Wanted to let everybody know it was an awesome conference, big, and we were the only CalX group supporting it. Jason.
Marcus, the only thing I would say, I think the most important thing of that conference is to get that word out that happened, that there are 3 such movements trying to work together to help each other become independent.
Yeah, we massively promoted that on our Facebook and Twitter, and that's why I wanted to bring it up at the meeting. And we're going to keep talking about it because for us, it was a huge success for CalExit. Again, you had a secession conference, and then a few weeks later, or a week later, days later, you had Texas secession in the news. Nationwide news. And then days later, you had Roe v. Wade being overturned, which gave liberals a reason to secede. So when we look at the fortuitousness of events that none of us have control over, I think destiny's on our side. Nobody could have planned this conference was going to line up right before Texas figured out how to get their thing in the legislation, right before the Supreme Court decided on their own to release the final version of Roe v. Wade. Like, we have no control over those things. Those are 3 separate actions. Why did they all happen within days of each other? And how incredible a marketing experience for that to happen like that. Just fell into our laps, which is why I say, the wind is on our backs. Things are going to get worse. Division is even higher. The rabbi sent us an article from the Atlantic magazine that's talking about, there's multiple people talking about, because of the protest with Raid, there are multiple people talking about, because of the protest with Roe v. Wade, that you have permanent, insurmountable division in America. Not my words. You're seeing a lot of people saying that in the news. They're going, look at how well people are handling Roe v. Wade. I mean, did you guys see where the capital of Arizona was stormed? Yes. Protesters stormed the Capitol. Now, I thought storming a Capitol was bad, as we saw on January 6th. Liberals just got done spending a long time. Hold on, Dan, I'm going somewhere. Hold on. And I know we have different values, but I think you're going to like this. So liberals got done spending a month talking about how storming a Capitol is wrong. Right? January 6 hearings, you better pay attention. And then Roe v. Wade happens. And within one day, after literally watching hearings on January 6, what do liberals decide to do? Storm a Capitol. Has there been any condemnation from liberals about storming that Capitol after criticizing conservatives for doing the same thing? To my knowledge, no. So when you have both sides storming Capitols and not seeing it wrong when their side does, that's the kind of stuff you see in a failed Latin American country right before it completely collapses and everybody gets the hell out. How do I know? Because I'm Mexican and because my family left. Because all of Latin America is full of failed states. Why? Because America invaded them. I've been studying foreign policy as a boy since 18. They're called banana republics for a reason. There's a pattern of failed democratic states that you can see in 30 different examples across Latin America over the last 40 years. Guess who's exemplifying everything they've done now? The United States of America. So, if bad governance equals collapse in banana republics in Latin America, what does it mean when America follows all those same steps in the last year? That we're going to be completely stable, or that we're going to end up like 30 other states? Professor.
Written by a professor of history at Yale University named Paul Kennedy. And he wrote a book called The Rise and Fall of Empires. And what he showed is that when empires collapse, they collapse very quickly. And the Soviet Union is a perfect example. Would any literate person predict by 1985 that within 5 years the Soviet Union would be no more? Nobody would have predicted that. When it happened very fast. And I think that's the pattern historically. So that's what we should expect. And that's why we have to be prepared.
And James Young, Southerner, who's from the South, I believe Louisiana or Mississippi, and he's been hanging out with us here in Cal Exit, completely agrees with you, Professor. So, we're facing collapse, and that's a Southerner. By the way, James is a good guy.
Okay, and I grew up in North Carolina and Georgia, so I have that Southern part too.
There you go. So we got a bunch of Southerners, and we got Texas independents here, and we're all agreeing that you're looking at this amount of division and capitals being stormed and rival investigations and newspapers saying that we're almost permanently divided within 24 hours of a Supreme Court decision. I mean, think about that. They didn't take months to look into this and go, I've come to the gradual, regrettable conclusion that America may not be able to come back together. They're saying this within 24 hours. I mean, think about that. There's no time to think. They're just jumping right in and going, wow, I'm watching TV. It's over, folks. The Atlantic
There was an immediate reaction like this in 1857 when the U.S. Supreme Court decided in the Dred Scott decision across the North, immediate reactions. And, within 3 years, you've got a civil war.
Yeah. It wasn't 1857 right before 1861?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and,
when the Dred Scott decision happened.
Jason.
If I may, real quick, we were about to go to our ambassador from Texas. He had a comment, I believe.
No, am I on?
You're on.
Oh, no. I was just getting excited what Marcus was saying. You can't say January 6th is an insurrection and then not say what happened at the Arizona Capitol was. And I grew up in Phoenix. I've lived there 4 different times as recent as last January. So it kind of had the one thing I will comment, you'll notice in Arizona in the summertime, we have to protest at night. Way too hot in the daytime. We don't protest in the daytime there. In the winter, you'll see us in the daytime. Summertime, no way. Protests are not that important.
So they want their rights.
Yeah. Do you value your freedom that much? Then go out into 127 degrees with negative 1,000% humidity and see how long you survive. I too have lived in Arizona, Mesa, not Phoenix.
Oh God. Oh, why would you do that to yourself? That's the hottest place in America outside Death Valley. But I just want to say, I think we're all agreeing. So here's Texas, here's California, liberal, conservative, or whatever the right phrase is. Y'all know what I'm getting at. And I mean, I think Roe v. Wade shouldn't have been overturned, right? But that's my opinion, and that's a value we have in California. And I can separate my personal opinion from a unbiased observation. When you have two different political sides and they both believe storming capitals is cool, it's over. Period. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying statistically, when you look at this in countries, bad sign. And when neither side can condemn their own team for doing that, even worse. So it'd be one thing if the Dems came out today and said, hey, liberals in Arizona, that was wrong. You shouldn't do that. And it would be one thing if Republicans would come out a few weeks ago and, hey, conservatives storming the Capitol was wrong. But neither side's saying it. They're doing it and they're backing it up and they're not criticizing their team, which means more of that's going to happen. So more Capitol stormed. This is collapse, folks, in real time. This is what this is.
Yeah, you know, the turning point in the Russian Revolution was when the workers in Leningrad rose up and basically stormed the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg.
Well, the Bolshevik Revolution, I think, it's a good example of the people, like, you know, claiming power or whatever. I think the collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is actually more pertinent to our current, and here's why. So I was born in the 80s. I watched the Berlin Wall come down on TV live. I know what I'm talking about when I talk about the Cold War, the dissolution of the USSR, all of this stuff, okay? And as someone of Germanic blood, you know, my heart was really there with the people in Eastern Germany. So one of which, it turns out, was the now former Chancellor Merkel. So keep this all in mind as I spell out to you exactly how the USSR fell, and think about what's going on here in America today while I say this. So the USSR was in this like competition, this never-ending one-upmanship with America. Oh, you did bigger and better, now we'll do bigger and better. You did more of those bigger and better, we're going to do more of these bigger and better. The people suffered pretty much the entire national funding, instead of going to food, infrastructure, things that, you know, human beings under their purview need. They instead spent it all on war, death and destruction. So eventually, because that is not a sustainable way to live, sure, you can do it for a while, but eventually you'll pull yourself maybe 300, 600 trillion dollars in debt. I mean, rubles in debt. And, you know, then there's no money for the people while they're starving to death. They can't even access a food bank because there are none. And even if they were, the roads are no longer existent. So how are they even going to get to this non-existent food bank?
So, well, in fact, that's the pattern Professor Kennedy found in his book is that empires tend to overspend on military matters to the point that their economy just cannot support it, and the whole thing collapses. But in the case of the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were so impacted by the expense of the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown disaster that it basically bankrupted the government because they didn't have enough money to deal with the nuclear fallout that was hitting Chernobyl.
Because
So
they had
a human
already
disaster.
spent it all on the Tsar Bomba. Yeah. So here's the thing. So as the wall is coming down, one president makes a slip of the tongue, says something. The memorandum was that he was supposed to say a certain thing a certain way, which made it clear that East Germans could go over to West Germany for the holiday, but were to come back. What he ended up saying was that East Germans are free to go over to West Germany, which meant that as the head of that place, he was saying, y'all are no longer under my purview. So that provided the precedent for the Berlin Wall to come down, which was one of the many dominoes, much like the overspending, much like the mass starvation, much like the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster. Yet another domino, right? Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and America's really mirroring this pretty perfectly. So, as the Union collapsed, now remember, it's many different countries coming together, kind of like the USA, except instead of states, they were all their own country. Coming together, forming this union, blah, 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 right? Now, as it collapsed, most of the people, maybe not 100%, but the vast majority of the people who had any sort of power and or any sort of access to anything valuable, whether it's a resource, a commodity, anything, nuclear power station, nuclear arms, no matter what it was, they pillaged their people and their countries. It didn't come to light until, roughly mid to late 1990s, right? That the reason why the former Soviet Union is still doing so poorly, on whole, is because there is nothing left to rebuild with, because what little would have been there was taken. Now, we're going to switch over to America current times real quick and point out vast overspending on war. Screw the people and their needs, give us more bombs and bullets. No baby bottles and books, more bombs and bullets. Just like the USSR. But wait, as things are collapsing, slowly, and yes, the Soviet Union, when it did finally hit that breaking point, was rather quick. But really, there were about 20 years leading up to the fall of the Berlin Wall, where it was getting as bad as America is right now. Lots of separation and division, lots of tiny little attempts at coups and insurrection and whatnot. It was the Soviet Union, so we don't really hear much about it, right? Also, it was the Soviet Union, and so they just kind of squashed any semblance of rebellion the moment that they caught wind of it. So here's America, slowly collapsing. Our dollar is inflating so much. It's at 163% inflated from 1986 when I was born. So the dollar is worth less. We've got all these supply issues. Oh, yeah, sure. COVID and corona lockdowns, this, that, the other. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that people haven't been redirecting the funding that comes from the taxpayers, the people, right? We were discussing before the meeting went live how the American people, taxpayers like you and I, paid to have these vaccines researched, developed, made, dished out there, stabbed into our arms. Who gets the profit from that? Those private companies. People are embezzling the national fund left and right. Every dollar that we as taxpayers are putting in over the last 20 or 30 years is going to private corporate sellouts. It is not making its way to the people. It is not helping to keep us alive. It is not helping to maintain the roads that we will need to get to some non-existent food bank in 5 years. Food bank lines are around the corner pretty much everywhere in the country. And we haven't even hit that point of no return. Oh my goodness, this is it. The Soviet Union is dead. We haven't even hit that point. And we're over $300 trillion in debt. The dollar is inflating beyond control. The president is inept, cannot seem, and not just the president, the entirety of the federal government has proven itself to be inept. They cannot perform their job. So, while they continue to embezzle the national funds down to absolute non-existence, this is our time to think for ourselves. Do we want to Tex it now? Do we want to NHX it now? Do we want to CalX it now? Do we want to continue to be stuck under this oppressive boot that does nothing but bleed us dry past the point of being dry? It's ultimate desiccation. We're not just dried out of it. We've been left out in that Arizona sun for a few years. We're dust. The next and only step left is that the wind just blows us away. So we can either gather ourselves, each entity individually, and also together in agreement that, hey, things are going bad. We don't want to be stuck in it just as much as you don't want to be stuck in it. I'll let you go if you let me go. We can either gather ourselves up and do this, or we can wait another couple of years. And then, you know, in a couple of years, when Team Red has complete control of the federal government, anyone who's not on Team Red is going to be the enemy of the state, probably going to be, you know, banned from voting. It's going to be like illegal to vote for people like myself who are green. And I can say that because that's the Dems that are pushing for that. That's not even Team Red. That's Team Blue that's pushing for my Green Party vote to get assigned to the Blue Party forever. But I don't vote Blue because I don't like Team Blue because they are a bunch of panderous. I can't even say it. They just pander. That is it. They do not care. They do not actually work for the people. They work for themselves and their interests, which means it's kind of a no-brainer of why Dems losing popularity nationwide would say, okay, well, the middle ground, we get all that middle ground vote because we use their talking points anyway. We don't fulfill them, but we use them. So their votes are actually meant for us so that we can stay in power, so that we can control the government. Now, back to that failed state thing, other countries do this, and the rest of the world says, whoa, 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 that's not democracy. I don't know what you're thinking it is, but that is definitely not democratic due process. Yeah.
4
So,
minutes.
as the union of socialist and non-socialist republics and states, of the disunited states of America, as it crumbles, as it's been crumbling and continues to crumble, remember this prediction. 2 years from now, Team Red will control most, if not all, of the federal government. 5 years after that, we will have seen the point of no return, that final, oh my God, it has happened, collapse point. Within 20 to 30 years from now, world maps will no longer have the United States of America listed on them. They will have places like Texas or the Independent People's Republic of Texas, whatever Texans decide to name themselves. And they will have, like, you know, California, where maybe we go for the Republic of California, as we've always been. Maybe we want to be the Independent Democratic Socialist Republic of Californians who really rock, bro. Well, you know, that's up to us to decide, and no one else. And that's the beauty of it. But I can almost guarantee you, and this is my solemn prediction, that it will not be the United States of America. So, Cal-Exit now. Cal-Texit now. Just, folks, let's get it done, please.
Well, Texas agrees with you, Jason, except on one thing. They think you're being a little bit optimistic. It's going to fall apart before 5 years. Other than that, they generally agree with you. Look at that. Kind of interesting conversation. Okay, last minute comments. Jason, you're CEO. I'm sorry, Texas. Is there any last minute comments you guys would like to make as your guest?
No, everything have to agree with. It's hard not to agree.
Jason, you're CEO. I just wanted to end the broadcast at 3 because we try to keep it tight, but I'm not going to end the studio, so we can still continue to talk. And there were some controversial issues I thought maybe we could talk about. It just won't be broadcast. Is that okay with you, Jason?
Yeah, totally. And since we're finishing, let me give that proper CEO finish here. As the head of Cal-Exit, the movement to reestablish California's independence, I am wholeheartedly grateful and thankful for the relationships that we have built with Liberty Block, NH-Exit, the New Hampshire Independence Crew, as well as the Texas Nationalist Movement, Texas folks. We have been trying to reach out in the hopes of securing a peaceful national divorce before we are forced to fight each other and kill each other based on who thinks who is right. I appreciate the fact that we can be so different and still really hold the same value, the same core value of cherishing life and not just treating it frivolously. You know, a lot of people say the abortion thing is you either care about life or you don't. Well, you know, I would say there are a lot of people who are anti-abortion because they say that they're, you know, pro-life, who are not actually as pro-life as we are. You are either for humanity and life and living and growth, or you're not. You're either 100% legal and peaceful, or you're not. And as we've been dealing with some folks who turned out to be extremists, people who are calling openly for violence, I am so deeply appreciative that we have folks like you. I am also so honored that Texas has appointed, the Texas Nationalist Movement has appointed us an ambassador. And we've been discussing ambassadorships, emissary stuff for a couple of weeks. And I am now using this time here to announce that Texas Nationalist Movement, you now have an official envoy ambassador from CalExit in our vice president, no less, Rabbi Stephen Axelman.
Woo!
It is official. Please use him as you need, lean on him as you need. I know he cares just like we all care. And we're all working towards the same goal, whether it's for different reasons or not, doesn't even matter. And on that note, I'd like to point out the CalExit envoy will be leaving Oregon soon, returning home to California, and hopefully the next stop for the CalExit envoy will be out to Hawaii to go and secure a relationship, a good working partnership with them. And hopefully we can bring Hawaii and Puerto Rico and see more of Movimiento por los Independencia de Baja. Yes.
Sorry, bro. Sorry.
I am nowhere near as good at saying it as you.
Yeah, I should have done that.
Hopefully, within the next couple of months, we will be seeing even more representation from even more movements. This meeting was historic. This PorcFest secession panel was historic. We've never had that level. We've never had that wide of a variety of people on this issue getting together. We've never had left, right, and center all coming together talking about the same thing, let alone about secession. At least not in America. Maybe over in France, right? Or one of those really democratic places like Finland. But not in America. So, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for everyone who showed up. Thank you for the input. James, special shout out to you, James Young of South Carolina. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a reasonable person who is willing to at least talk and use the brain that you were given.
Okay, with that, we're going to end the broadcast. This is not the end of the show. People can stay on and discuss issues if they like, but I'm going to end the broadcast because we try to keep it on time and we try to keep it tight. There's a lot to cover, but we're close. We're about 2 minutes over, so we're on. So I'm going to end it here so we keep our promise to the members. If you like to stay and talk, that's great. I'm going to be doing an episode of National Divorce in a little bit, and everybody's welcome to come on if they like for that. So 1 second, let me do the banner and then we'll drop out of here.